All right, folks, it's time for the news. We're going to see what's happening in the world and all along those lines because all kinds of amazing things are happening, including Hunter Biden suing Rudy Giuliani and attorney Robert Costello for hacking the laptop data. So that is what he is saying, is that the data was hacked and all in that space. So definitely that is one of the things that we are seeing in the news. And Cassidy Hutchinson's new book reveals a Trump White House even more chaotic than was previously known. So apparently, there's a book that is saying that maybe we're heading to another chaotic White House if he's going to get back in office. So, Cassidy Hutchinson has written this particular book, and we're going to see what folks have to say about this. One of those tell-all books and all in that space. So we're going to see what folks' reactions are in that way. And apparently, in Nagorno Karabakh, there is a fuel depot that blasted, killed 20 as refugee count rises. So they're having a lot of refugees in that area. I know that yesterday on the economic show, they were talking about what is happening in that space with our own migrants and all along that kind of way. So it'll be interesting to see how folks make the parallel between refugees in other parts of the world and what is going on in this country. And a Filipino diver with a knife helps remove a floating barrier installed by China over there in South China Sea. So that is definitely something that folks were impressed by, all in that way. And we've got Biden fumbling again. Apparently, he was fumbling in acronyms during a Pacific Island forum speech. So definitely, folks, I guess, are going to be wondering about his cognitive abilities and all along those lines. So that is something we are seeing. And in sad news, because we do know that there was a freedom fight that went on in South Africa for a number of years, and the granddaughter of Nelson Mandela died of cancer at a very young age, that being 43. So she just recently passed away. And of course, she was part of that family legacy. So that was definitely some sad news in that way. And Muslim Canadians are expressing anger and concern after the killing of the Sikh leader. So that is something else that we are seeing in the news as well. So definitely a lot of folks are paying attention to that and is also paying attention to what's going on in the Middle East because apparently a new Saudi ambassador to Palestine is a non-resident. So definitely the Palestinian Authority has welcomed the first Saudi ambassador to Palestine. So definitely that'll be us folks. They'll be interested in that and see how that plays in the whole relationships in the Middle East and all in that kind of way. So a lot of folks will be paying attention and seeing where that goes as well. And Trudeau, who has called the praise for Nazi linked veterans deeply embarrassing. So he's definitely trying to do some damage control in that space. So definitely a lot of folks are finding that a lot of things are going on in Canada politics as well. And South Korea, Japan, and China agree to hold a summit at the earliest convenient time. So, we had Mr. Suzuki on, and he is of Japanese descent on yesterday's World Edition. And definitely, Japan is still an economic power, and some of these others are economic powers as well. So there might be an Asian alliance developing, just like there is the BRICS alliance as well. South Korea, by the way, is showcasing its missile, drones, and tanks in a rare military parade. So definitely we are seeing that. And apparently Russia and US are trading barbs over Karabakh and Turkey. And definitely a lot of things are happening in that political front as well. And EU vaults Musk X in the fight against Russia's war of ideas. So, Mr. Musk is in the news as well. And Mexican and the Biden administration are considering a program with the UN to process 40,000 more migrants. And I know on Economic Monday, we had a whole conversation around the state of the migrants and what's going on in that way as well. So that is some of the things that we are seeing on the global front. Definitely, there will be some other things that will be taking place as well. By the way, it looks like in Niger, Germany, the U.S. is watching and waiting as France is pulling its troops out of that particular area as well. So, like I said, some of these military conflicts are coming up all over the world and all in that kind of way. And by the way, the Serbian president has turned to Russia amid rising tensions with Kosovo. So definitely that is something that might be one of those changing alignments as well. So definitely a lot of these things are going on in the world and in that way. Don't forget that tomorrow is the big debate, and later on this evening we'll be having world politics, and I'm sure that part of that conversation will be part of that as well. And oftentimes when Steve comes on, he talks about infrastructure, and there's an infrastructure situation that is going on in New Orleans here in the United States, because apparently there is a kind of a saltwater intrusion that is threatening New Orleans water supply. So definitely New Orleans apparently is bracing for a drinking water emergency and all in that space. So definitely that is something that we are going to see and all in that way. And I'm surprised that this wasn't a law in the past, but apparently Governor Newsom has signed a bill to classify child sex trafficking as a serious felony in California. So that is something else that we are seeing on the national front and all in that way. So there's a lot of things that are going on in the world as usual. And first of thousands of Lahaina residents are returning to homes destroyed by that deadly fire over there in Hawaii. So definitely we are seeing that. And U.S. Senator Menendez rejects a call to step down from Congress. So we also seeing things in the political front as well. So definitely that's going on. And of course, a lot of people are concerned about what's going on with the potential shutdown. And of course, there is inner politics, even in the Republican Party, as to what the shutdown will be, whether the shutdown will happen, and all in that kind of way. So definitely that'll be interested and seeing what goes on in there. And then the last stories that I'll get to, and I may get to some other ones as well as we're talking to our fellow panelists, but it looks like the U.S. FCC chair is looking to reinstate net neutrality rules that were rescinded under Trump. So looks like maybe the FCC is going to be trying to find ways to get more controls over some of the things that go on the internet as well. So I might bring in Nick and see what he's got to say about net neutrality and all in that kind of way, because there's all kinds of things that are going on, even on the legal front, because apparently Trump has asked the judge to reject a gag order requested by prosecutors in that federal election case as well. So I guess he's like saying, I want to talk and I want to keep talking and all in that space. So we're going to see what folks have to say and all along those lines. I do have my good friend, Debbie Peterson, with me as well. So how is Debbie doing and how are things going? You're back in California and definitely not having to deal with Hawaii, but it's good to see that people are returning back in that area. So I did see that that was one of the news stories, was that people were returning back to their homes after having been out of the area for a while.
Well, hi, Mark. Thank you. I am. Well, I'm sort of back. I've left Hawaii now, and it was hard to leave because with everything that was going on in Lahaina, I didn't want to leave because I felt like I would lose touch with what was going on. It was such a privilege to be able to be involved with the local news and hear what was really happening on a local level and be able to talk with Hawaiians who were engaged in helping. So it was hard to leave, but you get those airline schedules and the commitments, and I had to get back to California. But actually right now I'm in Mexico. And so that's a whole different perspective on things, and that's why you see the kind of funny background behind me. I'm not in one of my usual studios. So, but the good thing is I have great access to news, and so I'm able to keep up with what's going on. And I noticed you mentioned that folks in Lahaina were able to get back to their homes last night, and really I'd say there are three things that matter, but there were two things that I found really encouraging. And the first was, even in the shots on the newscasts, it looked as though they'd done an incredible amount of cleanup and as much restoration as they could. And I was really pleased that they were allowing people back in, at least a few now, so that they can start to rebuild the pieces of their lives and think through how they want to do that. You do that best when you're in place. And then I was also really, I lost my train of thought there, but I was impressed with how quickly Hawaii succeeded at doing all of that. And of course, there's always so much criticism, but there's a lot of help too. And I think they've done an outstanding job against incredible odds. And then the final thing that made me really happy is that it turns out that the death toll is much, much smaller than they'd anticipated, than they thought it could be. So good news all the way around.
Yeah, that's really good news. I mentioned earlier that I thought it was already a serious felony, but apparently this whole notion of some of the ways that things go on with child sex trafficking, Governor Newsom is making a law and all in that kind of way. And then I also saw that he's been very much in the news, as I was just saying, with other things as well, because I just saw a story where he was also being barring the schools from book bans on the race or LGBTQ plus race topics. So it looks like Governor Newsom is definitely making his stances known on a couple of other important issues. So I was just wondering, as one that lives in California, what is the word on the ground as to how Governor Newsom is doing and what his popularity is like? Because I know that he was in a very tight race at one of the races that he did. I think there was a whole recall and all in that space. So I was just wondering your impression of Governor Newsom and some of these things that he is doing, because apparently y'all are also going to be getting a high-speed rail, because California high-speed rail got a big boost from the Biden administration because they announced $1.4 billion to improve safety and boost capacity in 35 states. And of course, California is one of those 35 states. So maybe we're going to get high-speed rail all over this country and all along those lines. But it definitely looks like part of it will be in California, and there's some big money that is coming in that way. So I was just wondering your thoughts, one, about high-speed rail, and two, about California and the leadership of California.
Well, it's never popular to say you think someone did a good job because there are always so many naysayers. And I'm not a particular fan of Newsom, but I actually think he handled the pandemic well. I'm not particularly impressed with his going out of state to argue with other governors, making his, doing his grandstanding. I'm never impressed with that. I guess he's going to be having a debate with the governor of Florida soon. And while I probably agree with most everything Newsom says, I just find that kind of over the top and unnecessary and not particularly useful. But otherwise, I have been happy with the way he's operated. I am not at all happy with the state of cannabis in California. The state auditor has said way back in March, and we've heard nothing since, that he is going to that he is going to audit 6 of, I think there are over 400 cities, but 6 municipalities to see if they legally implemented their cannabis approvals in their communities. And we know that there are many that did not. There were a lot of government officials on the take. So, and there are a lot of deaths surrounding that, and a lot of really bad stuff going on. A lot of fentanyl in California, particularly in my county. And I know it's everywhere, but 1 week in January in my small county of about 275,000, we had 16 deaths in 1 week in January from fentanyl deaths. So that doesn't count the other overdoses. So there are some issues that really need to be addressed in California. I was trying to, high-speed rail is a very interesting one. I'm a real estate broker, and I actually did some right-of-way agency, which is purchasing land, representing utilities or the government in purchasing land for large infrastructure projects. And part of that was on high-speed rail. And there was some stuff going on there too that I wasn't impressed with. And I can't imagine that that's going to really happen statewide. I do believe that there are plans to have it happen in Southern California, which would be a good thing. I know certainly they've improved the service from sort of Central California to the Bay Area in California, and that's been a very good thing. It's allowed people to live in more affordable areas and commute to the city. And so I think there are some very positive things going on. And I think on the whole, Newsom has done a good job. But he's got some big issues. There's some issues with the budget. As I understand it, and then this is hearsay, but I think it's accurate. What they've had to do with the cannabis income is put it in trusts, which are tranches of money that don't show up on the budget, and how it's being dispensed or dispersed, it is not accounted for to the public. And that is very upsetting and concerning to me. So, there's one thing about Newsom is his administration has not scored well on transparency. I'd give them about a D or an F on transparency. That troubles me a great deal.
Yeah, and a lot of
Good
people are
morning,
wondering.
Mark. Can I just ask Eddie a question? Something you just said
Sure.
about money's being spent, not showing up on budget. How is this possible?
You know what? It's possible because they just don't do it. It's simply, they just don't do it. How is it possible? They do what they want to do. It's like the old boys club. The kids get on the board and they do what they want to do. Or
Does it mean that
yeah,
our budgets are a joke? They're not transparent? Not a true
absolutely.
reflection?
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. When I got onto my city council, I spent a lot of time with a very good city manager and a very good accountant saying, but I can't understand this budget. Can we please present this in a way that the public knows what the heck we're talking about? But in particular, what we see on budgets, and this is probably nationwide, but in California, the PERS, the Public Employees Retirement, I don't know what the S stands for, system probably, is incredibly underfunded, and cities have gone bankrupt over that. And most of them have huge monies owing that they cannot fund. And so in some cases, the whole of a city's budget, almost the whole of a city's budget would have to go to pay just the public employees' retirement backlog. And
Mark, this is something that the private industry can't get away with.
What's that? Sorry?
This is something the private industry can't get away with.
No, and it drives me crazy because it used to be.
As it should.
Yeah. What was that? Sorry.
As it should.
Yes, absolutely. In the good old days, it used to be the case that if you worked for government, maybe didn't get paid as much, but you had job security and you had a good retirement. Now it's the case that you get equal pay with industry and you get the retirement. And so that has become, as far as I'm concerned, that's socialism. Our government system is socialism. And I'm not opposed to socialism on some levels. I think we should have socialized medicine. I don't think health, I'm a liberal, but I don't think I've lived in Great Britain and I've seen the benefits of health being a human right as opposed to a capitalist system. But and I'm very in favor of capitalism. I'm a capitalist myself. So, but anyway, I digress a bit here. But the way that the PERS is being dispensed and the ripoff of that was not clearly shown on budgets, and they improved it, but it's still not clear on most government budgets.
And along those same lines, because we were talking about the
home streak, Mark.
Yeah, perfect.
Underfunded
Perfect
pensions. Underfunded pensions, and it is a big problem. You're absolutely right. CalPERS is one of the biggest, the California public retirement system, and you're right, Lee, they're allowed to run underfunded. By the way, private industry also.
Nick, not just underfunded, but what Denny brought up is they don't even show what they're doing. Forget about the underfunded.
I'm
familiar with off-balance sheet items. How is this legal?
Well, it's because the thing is there's no rules for transparency on pensions. And even the pensions that we work in the private industry, we don't disclose.
Nick, real quick question, because you brought it up and everything, and actually Lee brought it up as well, and it's this whole notion of the government versus the private sector and everything. But I've heard a number of private sector companies, including some that are relatively small, that comparatively speaking, that have gone offshore and taken some of their business offshore. So how much is this happening, and how much are the private corporations also getting away with a lot as well? Because I know a number of folks that are, very much willing to take their money into an offshore account or to other parts of what is happening.
Smaller companies, it's very, very difficult unless you're dealing internationally. But she brings up a very good point. Debbie got a very good point about underfunded pensions. We have in the United States the largest pension fund in the country, which is going broke. And your friends in Congress are ignoring it, Debbie. Okay, what is it? Medicare and Social Security. Now, Medicare is not a pension, but it will go broke during everybody's here lifetime, which will happen before the end of this decade. It's already scheduled. The trust fund will have no money, and they're going to have to go to Congress to ask for money. Unfortunately, Congress is also broke. They're down now $33 trillion. So we have two systems that are broken. If you ever fly an airplane today, You usually fly on two engines. Why? If one goes down, you fly on the other. In the United States of America, you have two engines. You have your Social Security engine and you have your government engine. They're both broke. Then what happens? The plane crashes. So the real question isn't it? It's not if it's going to happen. It's when it's going to happen, and that's Medicare. Now let's go to Social Security. Now we go on to the next decade. Social Security goes broke. Okay, your friends in Congress ignore it. Yeah, Menendez stole $500,000 bucks, but what about the trillions of dollars of underfunding? Why aren't they focusing on it? Why aren't there?
I mean, Nick, apparently they're trying to give a couple of $1 billion to the high-speed rail. So I don't know what folks thoughts are about high-speed rail, but that means that Lee can go visit Debbie in a very quick trip and everything because there'll be high-speed rail.
I'm actually a believer in high-speed rail. They actually brought it into Florida now. You go from Miami to Orlando.
Yeah, Bright Star.
But our high-speed rail still isn't the equivalent of Europe. For example, the high-speed rail, the fastest it goes in Florida is 125 miles an hour. Now, I was in Spain several months ago. We went 200 miles an hour. Now, why is it that the United States of America, purportedly the world's largest economy, purportedly the leaders in technology, our high-speed rail, even as it's built today, is half that of Spain, which we look our nose down upon. But I can tell you, there's no reason to look down on Spain today. The high-speed rail is twice as fast, and their murder rate is like 0.25% of ours. Here we have
Nick, hold on a second. Speaking of Nick,
death by gun.
Nick,
Death by gun is out of control. Spain,
I want to get to the gun thing as well. But speaking of health and speaking of Governor Newsom, there is this notion, and I think it's going to be even stronger. I'd love to hear Lee's thoughts and maybe even Jacoby's, but with the different cognitive things that are going on with Biden and all along those lines, I'm sure that people will be pushing Mr. Newsom and others to actually substitute for Biden in the next race.
I'm glad you brought the Biden situation out, Mark. Last week on Politics, our World Politics, which I think goes on tonight at 5 o'clock. Okay, I said our polls, because we put the Pod TV LinkedIn polls out, were showing Biden was getting crushed every time in the polls. And we said that last week. Today, Washington Post did a poll yesterday, and they show Biden also getting crushed by 10 points. Now,
Get crushed against Trump or crushed in general?
Getting crushed against Donald Trump, 10 points. 10 points, okay? Now the problem is we show that in all of our polls, and they go, well, they're LinkedIn Pod TV polls. They don't mean it. Washington Post set in their polls, and you know what the Trump administration, they just shrug their shoulders. It's polls. Now, this is typical, the Biden administration. This is typical of the Biden administration ignoring reality. Now, I always thought that Trump lived in a la-la land, which he does. But there's another guy out there that sits in Washington, D.C., who lives in La La Land, and that's Joe Biden. And that's the reason he will lose in 2024. And Trump, if he is the nominee, will win. Now, they also did another poll. If anybody else but Biden runs, he'll win. Okay, so the vote isn't really for Trump. It's against Joe Biden. So the Democrats, and I've been a member of the Democratic Party since 2000, when the Republicans decided to repeal the estate tax. But I also am not a crazy person who ignores reality. And the reality is the Democrats will lose. And the reality is Trump was.
Hold on a second, Nick. Along the same lines, do we have a Teflon ex-president? Because I remember there was that whole notion around Ronald Reagan and being Teflon and everything. I just mentioned Cassidy Hutchinson, I believe was the lady's name, has a tell-all book about the Trump administration. There all these indictments. It doesn't seem to matter to his followers and all along those lines. So does he win with all of this stuff going out against him?
Waste of time, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. You know, the reality is this is not going to be for Trump. This is an against Biden vote. And Biden will lose, and Trump will be the next president. The only way you're going to stop this train, and as a member of the Democratic Party, I can tell you this, there is no freedom of speech. You're either for Democrats all the way, you buy into their BS, you drink their Kool-Aid, or you're against us. And that's how they operate. And I even told the head of the Democratic Party this too. I said, look, you know, you guys are horrible. I mean, really. And Tom Perez, who became head of it, was the worst. So, you know, you have a party, unfortunately, that is just as bad as the Republican Party. It's called the Democratic Party. And they're just as stupid because they're ignoring reality. The
Well,
person
hold on a second, Nick. Speaking of
They're-
stupid, I just want to hear from other folks as well. But speaking of stupid,
can't fix
what about
you know.
Trump going into a store? He's been indicted, and he's asking to buy a Glock pistol. So he went into the store, and all of that. Apparently, he didn't have all the registration. So now folks are wondering what he was thinking about, because there are legal questions about him going in there and asking for the Glock when he was going around and running into this particular store. So are you surprised that he actually went there and asked? Because apparently this was in just down from us. It was in South Carolina. So he went into the low country area of South Carolina and said, hey, why not? Can I buy a Glock?
Sure. I mean, I think as we know, our gun laws are absolutely horrible. But like I said, the leadership in the United States is really, really bad, and they suppress good leaders. And this is going to create a lot of problems in Ukraine. I'm sorry, Sasha. Zelensky's got to get ready for a Trump presidency and a pushback. They better get all their military equipment in as fast as they can, because there's going to be a big change in the United States of America when Trump gets reelected as president. Biden gets his first reality check. But I don't think Biden's even competent enough to know that he lost. I mean, he'll go, did I lose? What's going on? So the Democratic Party has a real problem, a serious leadership problem. Gavin Newsom, I agree with Debbie that he's not the best, but he's better than what you have right now as your candidate. You need a new candidate, and you need a new candidate fast. F-A-S-T.
Nick, did you say Newsom is better than Biden?
Yes, anybody's better.
Look at California. What's going on there?
So,
You want that federalized?
Reality, Lee. Okay, and the reality also, no matter how much you beat up California, it is what, the fourth, fifth largest economy in the world. So I mean,
therefore,
fourth or fifth largest economy in the world, California. So as much as you can bash California, it is one of the world's largest economies, even though their income tax rates,
whether it's Biden or whether it's Newsom,
even though
or whether
people are
it's Trump,
leaving.
what are we going to do? Because Deb mentioned it earlier. What are we going to do about fentanyl? Because I just saw that one of the other cases that was going on, it's actually in Bronx, New York, and there was a third deadly case in that way, and that was actually involving a 1-year-old. So a 1-year-old had a fentanyl overdose and all in that space. So this is something that is impacting all aspects of our society, even our little infants and everything. So what are we going to do about this crisis?
The drugs. I think this is where Newsom actually had a good idea in terms of a drug court, basically a care court for drugs and mental health issues. So even though he does have some bad ideas, he actually has some good ideas. And being able to force somebody that has mental illness to go to a rehab place, and to force people that have addictions to go to a rehab place is a really good idea. If you don't do it, you end up in the problem that we have right now.
Well, how about in between, Nick? A lot of people who take these drugs, I don't understand it. They call it recreational. That they're not addicted. So what do you do with these people? Lock them up?
Well, speaking of locking folks up, I gotta tease you, Lee, because apparently a Pennsylvania state trooper has been arrested because he had, a lot of us have that space where we're in not being married. I know quite a few of you here on the panel are.
We're both not married. I get it.
Yeah, but he's this person that was not married was arrested for illegally committing his ex to a psych ward. So there's criminal complaints about the text message that prompted the married cop, because he was married, but he had a girlfriend, I guess, and he committed the girlfriend to the psych ward. So I'm wondering what kind of rules there are, because I do remember hearing that you could commit somebody non-voluntarily around the country, even here in North Carolina.
Well, in Florida, they have the Baker Act, which allows somebody, if they believe they're a danger to themselves or danger to others, then they get committed. But a lot of mental illness has nothing to do with danger. Same with addiction. There was a great documentary on Netflix about painkillers and how people become addicted to it. Some of them they get injured in an accident, literally, and then they start taking oxycodone. Back then, it was, of course, oxycodone. Now it's fentanyl. And the real problem is, when they did the studies, 60% no problem. You follow your doctor's order, you take Oxycontin. I even took fentanyl. Follow the doctor's order, no problem. That's 60%, the vast majority. But unfortunately, on the 40%, 20% actually become addicted to it. And so that's
Yeah.
the real problem. You have a small percentage of the population, but then when you spread it over millions of people, then all of a sudden you have millions of people that are addicted to things like Oxycontin and fentanyl. In other words, it has an addictive quality to it, similar to cigarettes, and frankly, alcohol. So we have a lot of things out there that basically prey on addictive behavior. And so, unfortunately, you do need professionals to intervene, and unfortunately, our laws do not allow, because of our quote freedom, for professionals to intervene. And Newsom actually did lead the way in changing that, at least in the great state of California, where they can get people basically forced on to mental health clinics, which are necessary, because at some point in time, they did a study, somebody's going to suffer from mental health breakdowns at some point in time in their life. It's like breaking a leg or breaking a finger.
Yeah, I hear you. Hey, Sasha, just really quickly, I know we got the Ukraine-Russia show coming on, but Nick brought up a valid point, and you've talked before about how you don't think that Trump can win and all along those lines. But what do you still hold to that? And also, if he does win, are you concerned about how he will handle not just Ukraine, but international affairs in general? Because I know on several shows before you have said that his diehard supporters will vote for him, but you didn't think that a lot of the others would always back him, and you didn't think that he could necessarily win. So do you still have that opinion, or has it changed some?
Actually, it's a good thing that Trump, who was lying 90% of all his life, so you cannot take his words seriously when he talks about stop any help to Ukraine or so on. That's what he says today, but he says many other things. He says that General Milley has to be prosecuted, and not only prosecuted, he wants to kill him by firing squad or something. So if you take seriously anything, whatever this idiot says, I don't think you're doing a good service to yourself. He's complete, first of all, he's a crook, he is a liar. And if American people want to see the president of their country a lying, crooked, twice impeached, lost everything. He lost his father's inheritance. He lost all the money. He lost all his businesses, including Trump's university. He lost the House. He lost the Congress. He lost Senate. He lost twice impeached, and it just the list goes on, and never mind this latest indictments or so on. This type of a man that Americans want to see as a president, shame on you. What can I say?
Sasha, any thoughts about Biden? They're calling him out every day for another lie.
Look, Biden, I think the best case for Biden could be that he's still alive. He's breathing. He's not dead yet, although but some people wish he would be. And I think I would agree that this is a very, very big problem for Democrats to have Biden running for the office at the age of 110. I forgot how old is he, but it's very advanced age. I mean, I'm not a young person and so on, but still, even I would never contemplate it to run.
Hey, Mark, I'm curious, why do so many politicians have a problem with the truth?
Well, I mean, isn't that part of the nature of politics? Is that
No, that's about the nature of the person.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's quite a few politicians that are trying to win, and they will say what they want to say in order to convince you that they are on your side. So I think a number of politicians have a inherent trait that isn't all that great. And I'm not saying all politicians.
You have to ask Debbie. She's a mayor. I mean, a former mayor, so she might be able to give us some insight on why politicians have problems with the truth. Besides the fact we can't handle the truth. So.
She wrote an entire book about corruption.
But, you know, I think it's a really interesting question because there's that saying that's gone on for more than a century. You know that power corrupts, and one of the things that I've started doing is I write a blog for Psychology Today, and they want me to write about women, corruption, happiness, and government. So, and I can't write as a psychologist. I'm absolutely not qualified to do that. I'm just an interested bystander, and or a concerned bystander, even more. And it's that very lack of transparency that causes me to write the books I'm writing. I'm hoping I can enlighten people, or at least frighten them enough that they'll become enlightened and pay attention to what's going on. But what they're finding, it's a very interesting question. Does power corrupt? And I agree with you that power does not corrupt. It's the individual, and it's about who we select to represent us. And it always blows my mind that over the lifetime, the average person gives $500,000 in taxes, and I say gives, although we have no choice. And if you multiply that across your family, who on earth would ever give multi-millions of dollars to anybody that they didn't really trust as a fiduciary? And yet we do that year after year after year in a never-ending money pit, money well, to people that lie to us. So a lot of it comes down to choosing the right people, and how do you know how to choose people who are independent of that, or are independent enough not to have to lie. And
Yeah,
yes, some of it's on us. A lot of it's on us.
Debbie, it's not just the
Yeah,
politicians, and I love to
that's
hear
voter.
Nick's thoughts about this, because there is a case coming on to the courts, I think today and everything, and it's the justices, and the justices are going to have to deal with their own political thing and their own kind of situations, because apparently they're in a conundrum, and that's actually what the article said in The Hill, because they're going to have to consider cases with their own, because apparently there was a case involving a company of a hedge fund manager who apparently flew Justice Samuel Alito to Alaska in 2008. There's so far no indication that Alito will step aside. Sounds to me like if you're involved in the case, you said step aside. And I know there was also some cases involving Clarence Thomas and some of the other justices as well. So I guess they're going to rule on themselves. And I'm going like, how can you rule on yourself when you're the one that is involved in the whole case? Because there was even things around like some real estate deals. And I know you're in the real estate space, Debbie, with Justice Clarence Thomas and mega donors, and definitely a real estate magnate, Harlan Crow. So, I mean, how are you going to rule on something that is supposed to be on your own thing? So I'm thinking there's no way they're going to rule against themselves, but I could be wrong.
Well,
Must
I
have been conflict of interest. Mark.
absolutely.
It's
And
really
I think it raises a really interesting question that I think we've kind of talked around a lot in the media, but hasn't really been addressed. And that is, and it comes up in California, and I really appreciate it. The Fair Political Practices Commission talks about even the appearance of corruption can be as harmful as the actual corruption itself, because what it does, it harms democracy, because it turns people off, it makes people indifferent, it makes people believe that all politicians are corrupt, so they just walk away, and then the system becomes more corrupt. And we're not talking about that, and that's what we've got with these justices. Even that's what we've got with Menendez right now. Whether he's innocent or not, it's the appearance of corruption. He made really bad choices. Innocent or not, he made bad choices. Guilty or not, he made bad choices.
I would agree.
And that is considered criminal in California in some cases.
Yeah, you're supposed to avoid as a justice even the appearance of impropriety. But as you read and actually the American Bar Association has a whole list, and every bar association, you're a member of ethics rules. Then you see how they're actually applied. And in some cases, they're applied differently than in other particular cases, which is a big problem. But here's one of the most interesting ethics rules that you find out once you're practicing law. If you find something wrong and you bash the legal system, you're subject to disbarment. So this is a true case that actually happened in Chicago. Okay, so one lawyer was going to the probate court and said, after going to court for many years, he found this to be like the most sleazy thing in the world. They do all these backdoor deals, all this blah, 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 and started basically exposing the probate courts in Chicago. So what did the ethics board do in the state of Illinois? They went after the attorney who was talking about the unethical behavior of the Chicago, probate courts, the state and local courts Illinois. So the sad part, they have a gag order, and people don't know this because they don't practice law. But basically, all lawyers are under a gag order, not to divulge negative things relating to the legal practice, the stuff that you see. And unfortunately, after practicing law now for more than 40 years, I've seen a lot, and it's not like what people say it is. But unfortunately, if I start talking about it, the bar comes after me for talking about it because I've been.
Nick, is there any good reason that they may have to that law?
There's a reason behind it. Because what happens if too many attorneys started talking about all the back end of deals that they actually see and go on, then people will not, quote, trust the legal system. Okay, because the thing is because all
If they're true, what's it? I don't understand. Why the cover up?
I don't understand, but see, the whole objective is you're supposed to believe it works the way it works, and if you do, and everybody else does, life is good. If all of a sudden they start showing how it really doesn't work, then your faith in the legal system will go down, which is bad for the legal system and lawyers in general.
Why don't they just clean it up?
Well, there's a lot of things that they should clean up, and all of that.
Clean it up?
No, speaking of cleaning up, hold on a second. Nick, speaking of cleaning up,
for an arbitrator in Seattle, Washington. Okay, one of the big firms in Seattle, right? And it was a multi-six-figure case. And what happens is right before the judgment, we went and found out the lawyer who took the arbitration as a, quote, independent neutral, actually owned our defendant's house. We asked him to recuse himself, and he refused to do it, and then issued a big judgment against us. We went to the Bar Association, they shrugged their shoulders because his partner was the head of the Washington Bar Association. So I'm sitting there going like, you cannot be serious because you're not supposed to take a case when you have a known, and by the way, he did know that his law firm represented our defendant, when you have a known conflict of interest. But they do it. And as I went through this whole case, Lee, it's like, I haven't read Debbie's book yet, but I'm sure I'm going to find it fascinating and true. It's like the whole Washington state legal system is full of corruption. I mean, it's just like, you got to be kidding me. And yet, here's how they portray themselves. We're Washington state, we're liberal, we're in favor of all these wonderful things and ideas until you get involved in it. And one of the lead attorneys that we hired at Preston Gates and Ellis, when I told him about this, he looked at me, and he'd been one of the top attorneys in the state. He goes, that's the way it is here. I don't know what your problem is. In other words, he's telling me, yeah, we're corrupt. You didn't know that?
Get over it.
Speaking of corrupt, there's a woman, and I want to get to something else as well, but there's a woman that is
media we got.
Not a big person in terms of the popularity in the she's popular in the MAGA circles. I don't know if she's popular in other circles, but she has had a hard no on 2 spending bills after McCarthy flips on Ukraine. So I just wondering Sasha's thoughts about Marjorie Taylor Greene, because apparently she has flipped and said that she's going to give a hard no on the 2 spending bills after McCarthy has also flipped. So maybe there's some political hand wrangling that is going on in this way also around the Ukraine aid. So are you concerned about some of these folks?
I wouldn't give Marjorie Taylor Greene any airtime, Mark. I mean, give her no airtime at all. See, this is the problem with Fox News. I finally watched it yesterday because my wife was upstairs and she won't watch Fox. Okay, but I wanted to see it because some of my friends go, "Oh, they're fair and unbiased." They are completely biased and they're not fair. Even today, I mean, if you look at their headlines, you can see you're being manipulated. In other words, the biggest inflation in the world, I mean, they're putting on headlines and lies that are crazy. And Laura Ingraham, I keep trying to figure out ways I could actually like her. I really am, and I can't. I don't know what's wrong, but between her and Rachel Maddow, I don't like either one of them. One, because they're too nutty for me. But Laura Ingraham, whoever watches you got to be out of your bloody mind. On one episode I watched, she goes, "Oh, the Arizona governorship and the thing will definitely go Republican," and it didn't. I mean, so she talks out of her rear. The whole network talks out of its rear even today. Even though they say we're going to become more balanced, they're not even close. The only thing they were right on was the Biden and that's the reports we're getting too, is losing big time in the polls.
No, he's losing big time, but he's got a major endorser now because apparently Ralph Nader has said that he'll support Biden because he knows the difference between fascism and autocracy.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And see, it's just like what Sasha goes, who would vote for a guy who's a crook, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what Sasha thinks. It doesn't matter what anywhere panel thinks. It's what they think that counts. And
Nick, but why would Biden care about the polls?
They don't think, so it doesn't matter what we say.
Nick, based on the last election,
the reality is Trump will be the president of the United States.
and Mark, I don't understand why Biden would care about the polls. So how did he campaign the last election? And he won from his basement.
Election was stolen.
You know,
Was it?
I want to comment on Biden's neurological state.
Yes.
You know, he hasn't made a lot of it, but apparently he did have a stutter when he was young. And I have a son who had 4 out of the 8 traits for Asperger's. And so I've done a lot of work on understanding neurology, and my mother had a stutter. So I've looked at a lot of these things, and I think, you know, the fact that he's actually overcome that, but it comes out, it shows sometimes. And so he's not a great orator. He's not a great communicator. He's not the worst. I think I'd hasten to add that, you know, Trump repeats the same thing over and over and over again, which is actually good marketing. But I often think he does it because he can't find anything else to say. It appears to me. So I think that we're being too hard on Biden about that. I'm not saying that he doesn't have a huge issue to overcome, but I don't think that we should judge him as being incompetent because of that. And he's traveling internationally on a schedule that at 67 I sure wouldn't want to do, and in fact at 27 I wouldn't have wanted to do. And he still comes out looking pretty good.
Yeah,
and
but he's
not easy.
He's going to be an octogenarian, and it's just like in chess.
I would
I hate
like
to say it, you will not get better as you get older. You
usually don't get better. No, it would be very odd.
I would like to remind everybody about State of the Union speech of Joe Biden. I don't think there were any politicians in the United States before Joe Biden, probably even after, who could do the same type of speech.
Sasha?
State of the Union.
In fairness, Sasha, was it live or was it recorded?
It was live. State of the Union is always live. It's never been recorded.
My recollection is different.
He delivered the speech right in front of the Senate, the Congress,
Hold on a second, because that's the other story I was going to get to and everything. I'm going to play the role of Rick Rosner on this show now and everything, because apparently the rise of virtual artificial intelligence girlfriends is enabling the silent epidemic, because apparently there's a silent epidemic of loneliness in an entire generation of young men. It is also having severe consequences for America's future, because they're saying that a virtual girlfriend can actually cause a future crisis among Americans, because with millions of users, apps have created the virtual girlfriend that will talk to you, love you, allow you to live out your erotic fantasies, and learn through data exactly what you like and what you don't like, creating the perfect relationship. So apparently an influencer named Karen, gotta love the fact that the influencer created a AI bot of herself, and she named the bot Karen, and then she gained over 1,000 users, i.e. real boyfriends, in less than a week, and a wait list of more than 50,000 people. So apparently you can create whatever you want in this AI world, and a lot of people are doing that. So they're not even bothering to try to go out in court and all along those lines. So and some of you have young folks in your life and everything, because there's even some hard numbers that they gave. So, you know, we like statistics. More than 60% of young men ages 18 to 30 are single, compared to only 30% of women the same age. And 1 in 5 men report not having a single close friend, a number that has quadrupled in the last 30 years. And the amount of social engagement with friends dropped by 20 hours per month over the pandemic, and is still decreasing. So these young men are feeling lonely, and I guess they're reaching out to figure out how they can deal with it.
Those numbers don't make sense, because 51% of the U.S. population is women. So if 60% of the men are single and 30% of the men are single and 60% of the women aren't, that means a good number of those women must be lesbians. No, I don't know what, but that's not making any sense. Those numbers don't add up. That can't be.
That's
like I
right.
said, statistics are very interesting, and people use the statistics for a number of things. But yeah, this was an article that came out about the notion of AI, and I can't see a lot of people that are being lonely and are creating things. And they also talked about the birth rate, because apparently they said that there are 600,000 fewer births in 2023 in the U.S. relative to 15 years ago, and the number of children per woman has decreased by more than 50% in the last 6 years. And I can actually believe some of those numbers and everything. But apparently part of this article says that we don't have enough people to work, which we've said on this show. They won't be able to pay our bills, and not just to other countries, but to ourselves. And Nick, you're going to love this. They brought up your argument as well. They say we spent more than 1.6 trillion in 2021 on Medicare and Medicaid, with the number of Americans on Medicare expected to increase by 50% by 2030 to more than 80 million people. But over the same period, we will have only 10 million more Americans joining the workforce. And they also brought up your stuff around Social Security as well, because they said in 1940 there were 42 workers per beneficiary on Social Security. Today there are only 2.8 workers per beneficiary, and that number is getting smaller. So apparently we're going broke, and the young men who will play a huge role in determining our nature's future are going there with AI girlfriends in their pocket. So what is our thoughts about this? And this something that, because y'all are the folks that have kids and all in that space. Like I said, I do have nephews, but no kids of my own. So are you concerned about these AI folks coming out here and taking over?
Why is it that American born are having less children now than they did generations ago? Forget about the immigration. That's a separate issue. Why are native born Americans, I think, across all whatever religions or races or what have you, are having less children?
What I have heard, and this is a concern that I've talked to a number of my friends, is there are quite a few people that are not wanting to have children because they are basically thinking that the U.S. and the world is going to hell in a handbasket, if I can use that expression, and everything. So they do not want to bring other children or other people into the world. I've heard that from a number of folks in my circles and everything. So they have said, no, that's all right. This world is crazy. I'm not bringing kids into it. I've had a couple of friends. Matter of fact, I interviewed one yesterday. She's a well-known songwriter, and her and her husband are doing quite well, but they have no kids. And I think that they are probably a little bit younger than me. They might be in there, or thinking she might be, if I'm 61, she might be in her mid to early 50s and all in that space. But I think that particularly during the pandemic and even before the pandemic, a lot of folks were going like, no, that's all right. I see where the world is going, and I don't necessarily.
Mark, I don't disagree with that. But on the other hand, we have so many unwed mothers or single mothers raising children. Why aren't they having the same thought pattern?
Well, I mean, which thought pattern are we talking about? I mean, they are definitely
unwed single mothers, women getting pregnant, knowing there's no man in their life, but they're choosing to have children. Why aren't they concerned about the future of these children?
I mean, I think they are concerned about the future of the children.
They're still going ahead and having children at a higher rate than those that are married.
Conversations around foster kids. There have been conversations around foster care and a number of things. So I definitely know some folks that are, after they have the children, maybe they don't want to keep the children themselves, so they are trying to figure out ways to make sure that the child is cared for, whether that is fostering or whether that is adoption or whether that is a number of other things in that lane. But like I said, I'd love to hear from those of you that are parents and all in that space. Because like I said, I'm only the uncle of
grandparents.
Or grandparents.
I have 3 grandchildren, but here's the you have economic problems. Now, fortunately, my son has a real good job at SAS Systems, but let's say they go on to college right now. All right, one thing I'm looking at doing, and subversively, is getting them to go to university outside of the United States of America. Why outside? First of all, I went to Oxford, outside the United States. Why did I go to Oxford? I showed my parents years ago. I said, it's cheaper for me to go to University of Oxford, actually St. Edmunds Hall, Oxford University, than it was to go to University of Miami in law school. So I did part of my law training in St. Edmunds Hall at Oxford University because it was less expensive. Oxford is a public school. Now, that goes back into 1982. Since then, a lot of people have gone to Oxford because of the same reason. They attract an international crowd. However, internationally, there's a lot of good universities, from University of Bologna, University of Padua, which, by the way, alumni is like Galileo. There's a lot of universities around the world that are really top-notch universities in Europe that cost amazing, like $235 a semester for a non-resident of their country, $600. I mean, 10 times cheaper than a cheap university in the United States. The real problem we have, and I went to very expensive private schools, but we could afford it. I went to University of Denver, very expensive, Miami, expensive private school. But today, most people, they can't afford that. The law degree at University of Miami is over $250,000 to go what? Get a $40,000 a year law job? It's ridiculous. So what happens is they take out student loans. It's stupid. And then our student loan system is now 1.7 trillion. We didn't let our kids take out student loans. I'm not going to let the grandkids take out student loans. I'd rather pay for them to go to school overseas in a safe country like Spain.
That makes a lot of sense, Nick, and everything. The other thing to Lee's point, that, and I know we were getting ready to wind down and everything. The other thing that I would add to Lee's point is how much are we actually, and I don't know, because like I said, I'd have to check with my brother and others that are in the school system, including some teachers and everything. But I think that some of our institutions are also kind of giving up on roles that they used to historically have and everything. And I do think that parents and folks in the family are responsible for helping kids understand the nature of sexuality and all along that kind of line. But there was a time that sex ed was definitely taught in the school systems. I don't know how much of that is being taught now. And I think a lot of people are learning from the streets. And if they're learning from the streets, then they wind up in those situations that you are talking about, Lee, and all along those lines where they are unwed mothers and all in that space. And I also think that some of our institutions are not doing as good a job as they used to do. I know that there used to be whole conversations, even in some of our religious institutions, that I think that they are afraid to tackle sometimes. Even that is supposed to be part of their moral code and part of what they're supposed to be about. So
I think the other side of that, and men won't get this, I don't think, because it doesn't happen to them, is that you can be on birth control and get pregnant. It happens often.
Yes.
And so some of those unwed mothers might be people who are diligent, who've become pregnant, despite using birth control consistently, and who are unwilling to terminate a pregnancy.
Yeah,
so I don't know what the
there is
percentage
something
is,
these women could do if they really don't want to get pregnant.
What's that?
There is something these women could have done if they really did not want to get pregnant.
Oh yeah, exactly. Abstinence is absolutely the best birth control. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of people...
to Mark's question, certainly my son, who's 27, he and his friends say, yeah, it's that same thing you're hearing, Mark. The world is too bad a place to want to get involved in it, to want to bring kids into it. And what I say to them is, hey, you're the smart ones. Please bring children into the world. So Nick, I'm glad to hear your kids are having children. And I really agree with Nick. And my son has been working to pay off his student loans. He's almost done with that now, 5 years out of college. And he wants to do a master's degree. In fact, his instructors wanted him to do it straight out of college. And he said, no, I have to pay off my student loans first. But what he would do is he would go to Germany, because as Nick says, you have to learn German to do it. But learning another language is a good thing. And it increases your IQ 10 points, apparently. And so he's more than willing to go to Germany for a year, learn German, and then be able to do a master's degree in music for free.
I know we're wrapping up because I know it's time to end, and all of those things. We got the Ukraine, Russia, China, so coming up very shortly. I was going to mention some news from the entertainment world. One that was kind of sad, and the other one that was kind of interesting because it is later life people that are still continuing to go into life even at a later space and all in that way. So David McCullum, so those that watch NCIS, he played the role of Ducky, has passed away at the age of 90 and everything. So he definitely lived a very illustrious life and a very long life in the entertainment field and all of that. He was also the man from U.N.C.L.E. or involved in the man of U.N.C.L.E. and all in that kind of way. So our thoughts go out to that person. And then on the flip side of that, the wrestler Hulk Hogan apparently decided to get married at age 70, I believe it was, and everything along those lines. So there's still hope for those that want to get married even later in the life because he has done that. And
Mark, you see how old his sweetheart is?
I think she's like 45, so there's like a 35-year gap.
Nice gap there.
25-year gap. So yeah, there might be hope. So let's see. I'm 61, so does that mean I got to go look for a 36 or 40-year-old? Is that what you're trying to say?
Exactly.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. And on that note, we're going to get on out of here. And I know that Sasha has got the Ukraine-Russia show ready to come up very shortly, and we'll hear a lot of discussions about what's going on in that space. And hopefully we'll see Debbie back tomorrow, and we've got a special guest on tomorrow as well. So we get ready to get on out of here.
Y'all take care. Have a good day.